Hello and welcome to the show. My guest today is Peter Hughes. He has an interesting story about starting out in theater in Los Angeles and following a hunch, a little nudge to move to Denver, Colorado and start again. I'm all about a fresh start. I always say I'm a second chance taker as many times as I'm given. And he has a really interesting story about following that hunch to go and really doing the work that it takes to live to his full, purposeful life and now helping other people do the same. Hi, Peter. Thank you for being here today. We all the way from Denver, Colorado. So thanks for being here. And I'm just looking forward to sharing your story.
Well, so good to be here, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, we're going to get to your books and the tools you utilize to help your clients. But first, let's talk about your background. Do you have an interesting background in terms of how your career started to what led you into coaching back in 2004, way before there were as many as coaches as there are today? So you were a leader in that arena. So let's go back though first and talk about the work you were doing before you became a coach and started utilizing the tools you have to help your clients.
Certainly, I have a background in theater arts with a focus in production and directing, and I've wanted to be in theater ever since I was a child. So that was a direct focus for me, direct shot, no question. I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And then I got a job at the Los Angeles Opera as a stage manager, and it was a great job. I was in a great location, top of my field as far as that part of my life. And one day during rehearsals, I was just feeling unsatisfied and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I just got this feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. And it confused me because I thought I'd worked so hard to get here. Um, I don't understand.
How
And
long had
then
you been in that work at that point?
about 10 years,
Okay.
10 years professionally.
So you didn't feel
And
burnt out necessarily. You felt fulfilled in the work you were doing, but something wasn't translating to where you were in your life at that point.
right, one of the things I noticed is that, and this was a projection, I get that on my part. I noticed that the people I was working with were not happy and not fulfilled. And I thought, we're working in the creative arts. We are so blessed to have this opportunity to be able to create, and we're at the top of our game with the LA Opera. And so I couldn't figure out why people weren't more joyful and fulfilled and celebratory of coming together and creating. And so I just started asking questions in my mind, and um, one by one, different resources started showing up in my paths. Books started literally popping off of a bookshelf in a Barnes and Noble one day, the Celestine Prophecy. And I thought, okay, this is trying to tell me something. So I just started exploring what it is about how we show up in our life that creates our experience of the world around us. And so I
Let me
just
ask
started
you
asking
something
this
real
question.
quick about that. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to go back to something you were
Sure.
talking about, how people weren't happy or fulfilled. So was that affecting your fulfillment? Was that energy affecting your energy or making you, that's what started to have you doubt where you were. But do you think if everyone had been happy doing the work that you were happy doing, that you would have made this change? Or was there negativity starting to affect what you loved about the job?
Great question. And in retrospect, if I answered this question the day that this happened, I'd say everybody around me was miserable and it was affecting my joy. In retrospect, I could see that they were my experience of the people around me was a projection of something that I was navigating internally, but I couldn't identify it. And we find ourselves in that place in our life regularly. I don't know why things aren't working. And we look to external influences to be the source of it. And we realize it's actually me projecting onto the world what's something inside that hasn't been addressed. And so I found myself again asking questions and exploring different modalities, which led me to one book and another teacher and another teacher. And then I got this hit to move to Denver, Colorado. No justification other than it was a really strong hit. And I knew enough in my life that when if something's that strong, I need to follow it and
Just
trust it.
a gut feeling.
Absolutely. It was a body feeling.
Well, and
It
so
was,
that then let's I want to unpack that as well because I talk to a lot of people who, they geography plays a huge role in our lives and where we end up. And when I came to Wenatchee, where I live now, I had been on a 2 month journey. It was right after my husband had passed away. I'd been traveling and visiting 9 different family and friends, starting in Los Angeles and ending up here in Washington. And if I had started the trip in Washington and ended in LA, I never would have moved here. But it was soon after my late husband had passed away, and I figured out by the time I got up here that I could leave Texas and he was everywhere. But when I first started that trip, I still was really clinging to Texas and raising my son exactly where we lived in the exact same places and the exact same experiences. And so I bring up that part of my story to say that was here and I had a really good experience just at the park with the kids and no West Nile virus and no humidity and like sunshine and a breeze. And that mattered to me with a young son. And I went and found a realtor that day and made an offer on a house 2 days later. And so I understand that nudge that sometimes we ignore because there is enormity in those kinds of decisions. But for me, I just thought, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just move back to Texas. Like it's geography. It doesn't matter to me. My parents moved around. We made decisions like that. So do you think that sometimes, like when you're making that decision to go to Denver, what was connecting you to Denver? Anything? Had you been there to visit? Did you know people there? What was, I mean, it could have been anywhere, but why Denver?
Well, I went to visit a friend in Denver during a break in rehearsals, same company, opera. And it was just Christmas time. It was just for a week. I needed to get away. And it was Christmas time, which is my favorite time of year, mainly because the energy on the planet is a much higher frequency, not just with Christmas, but with Kwanzaa and Hanukkah. There's a collective consciousness where the vibe goes up. So I was surrounded by that in Denver and it snowed and I was from Southern California. So the only snow I saw was on the movie lots with those soap
The
flakes.
fake snow,
So
right? Yeah.
yeah,
You had
fake
never seen
snow.
snow before then, for real?
And I had seen it, but I'd never like spent time in it.
Experienced it. Yeah.
It was just like an afternoon in the mountains or
Got it.
whatever.
Okay.
Um, and so I just started feeling a shift in my body and thinking, this is magical. I'm on vacations. Of course it's magical. It's Christmas, so everything's amplified. Is this really how I feel about this? And when I got on the plane to fly back to LA, of my inner voice said, you're moving to Denver. Get things ready. So I had 7 months of contracts to honor. And after that 7 months, I was driving to Colorado. And one thing I connect with more so now because I understand it now. I didn't understand it at the time. I felt it at the time, but I understand it now is when we step up to that kind of a feeling, that kind of an intuitive hit, if you will, that's our part in meeting the universe halfway. We're stepping into it. Then things start to unfold. So it's the faith we have when we step up that creates
Yeah.
the flow and rendezvous. And
Well, and
once I
it's
made
such
that
a leap,
connection,
and some people don't take that leap. Some people just don't.
yeah,
That the fear paralyzes them, and they never get to that other side of the thing that is
absolutely.
waiting for them and meant for them and part of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I work with clients and actors as well, this is where I got my skill set in talking people through the creative process and tapping up against their blocks, their emotional blocks, their physical blocks, and kind of working with them rather than against them. Is that when it feels uncomfortable, that's trying to tell us something. There's something there. It wouldn't be so uncomfortable if it weren't bumping up against something that was going to be quite spectacular. And
Yeah.
so as a director, I got to talk artists through that process. And so when I'd have an actor who was stuck in a situation, I had one in particular older actress I was working with who was really struggling with being vulnerable, or at least authentically representing being vulnerable in her acting. And I walked up to her and just pulled her aside at one rehearsal. I said, do you have any idea how stunning you are?
Hmm.
And she just went white. She didn't know what to say. I said, you're actually quite exquisite. And that scares you. I know that. Let's play with that. Let's play with, because it's who you are. Let's just get your head out of the loop you have your ego in that has you keeping from stepping into that. Because I think you're going to discover something about yourself when you step into that that's going to thrill you
Yeah.
rather than scare you. And so the big leap doesn't have to be geographical. It could just be a thought process.
Right.
And that's even scarier because you can't leave it.
Yeah.
You can't drive away from it. It's
Dang
with you
it.
24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's my training in working with mind shifting, identifying mind filters and working with them rather than surrendering to them or trying to deny them. And so when I moved to Denver, I started rendezvousing with different teachers, different modalities. Reiki, energy work was one of them. And then I started studying A Course in Miracles with a master teacher here in Denver. And it just started, I related to it. I understood it and made sense to me. in a way that nothing else had ever made sense to me before. And if you've ever read A Course in Miracles, it's like reading Shakespeare. It's its own language. And but I identified with it, and there's a poetry to it and a rhythm to it. And once I started diving into that exploration with the teachings in A Course in Miracles, I started realizing, oh, I was born for this work. This is why I'm here. And I have to clean my own house first
Yeah.
before I can step up and facilitate a cleaning service for other people, basically.
Well, that's the thing that I wanted to talk about next. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about how, you know, how important it is that, like when we're talking about coaches and when you hire people to help you get somewhere that you would take longer to get on your own, or maybe never get there on your own, you want to hire a coach who's done the work too. So like I teach a lot about outside of the box marketing strategies and how to grow your business outside of social media and how to give a signature talk and write books and all those things. And it wouldn't do any good to anyone if I didn't know how to do those things and I hadn't done those things myself. So let's take a break and talk more about your story and that connection to the people you help. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back talking with you, Peter, about the big move you made to Denver. And one of the things that I want to focus on for this part of our conversation is sometimes I think we make bold decisions or bold moves, and maybe we don't have a full idea of what those were supposed to mean. Like for me, I can say that once I moved here to Wenatchee, it seemed like a really great idea. My brother lived nearby. He was going to be part of my son's and my life after losing my husband, and I knew he would have a great influence on my son. And then my brother ended up in Canada. And so it really started making me think like, what did I do? And is this the right thing? But you got to push through some of those challenges that come when you are not quite sure about the reason for being there, or the reason to have that little voice telling you what you know is right for yourself, even when it gets really hard. And for me, I was dealing with grief and loss and rebuilding, and that was hard enough, let alone doing it in a new place. So when you get to this new place and you're excited about being in Denver and you feel like you've followed this calling, what roadblocks do you hit that you have to overcome that now you teach other people how to overcome? We'll get to the other people next, but for yourself, I mean, did you get there and it was complete bliss and everything lined up perfectly? Or were there some challenges along the way? My guess is there were.
There were challenges, and they were normal, basic challenges that you would expect in relocating to a new environment. For me, however, the biggest challenge was I had a fresh start. I could create whatever I wanted. I could be whoever I wanted to be. And within a year of having moved to Denver, I found that I had recreated the life I had in LA, in Denver, as far as how I related to myself and the thoughts I was having and the people I was attracting into my life.
So you weren't really growing yet.
I wasn't moving forward. You're right. I was.
You were kind of maintaining the life you had, just somewhere different.
I was recreating what was comfortable and familiar. And then I realized that's not why I came here. And there was only one moment. I'd been here 30 years last summer. And there was only one moment that I felt like I made a big mistake. And that was for a 15-minute window one morning when I woke up and there was a blizzard outside the first year I was here. And I thought, oh my God, I'm stuck. And my creative mind went to, I'm on the Donner Party. I can't get over the mountains. I can't get through the pass. We're going to have to start eating each other. Oh my God. Whoa, 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 calm down. Where's that coming from? And that's when I started tapping into, I've got tapes in my head that are outdated, and they're party mixes that aren't of any use to me anymore. And so again, teachers started showing up, and different, again, Course in Miracles was a huge informer for me. And so when I realized I have to change my mind about who I am and then create my life, because if I don't change how I'm showing up for myself, I'm just going to keep recreating old patterns.
Yeah, I have a friend who talks about the story that we keep telling ourselves, and how we sometimes are our worst storytellers because we keep telling the same old story. I have every year I write a post on Facebook when I have my annual no cancer checkup, and I've changed the picture and I have some kind of representation of how many years it's been. And at the 27th year, my picture just stayed there because the next year I lost my best friend to cancer, and the next year I didn't really feel like celebrating, and then the next year. So now all of a sudden it's 30 years, and I thought, gosh, I haven't done anything with this picture, which is just a outward thing, but it's part of my work I do in the world. And so I finally just recently, like just a couple weeks ago, put a picture of myself and my new BFF, my son and his fiance's puppy Madden. And and it just was like a load off. Like I don't have to keep telling this story that I have survived cancer another year. I think it's important, and I do share it because I think that people who are going through cancer want to know that somebody's lived 30 years after it, and is still thriving. But for it to cause me stress or to get in the way of grief or having a survivor's guilt because one of my best friends didn't survive cancer in these last couple of years, that is not it as it's intended to be. That is not the story that I want to be telling. And so, I think, and I talk with a lot of my clients about that too. It's like, at what point do you shift the script and start to just be the person who's living 30 years without cancer? And
And
so when I read about you, and I thought about that too, is about how, you have to start doing that inner work, or what good are you to your corner of the world, as I say so often.
right. And to your point about identifying that I can rewriting our script. I mean, we hear that a lot, but do we really understand the process that's involved with that? And there is a process to actually doing the work to do that. But first, we have to get to the place where we know we can do that, and we trust that we can do that, and we take accountability for doing it and holding ourselves responsible for doing the work to get there. And that's the work I do. Having worked with actors, and I like to use actors and acting as a metaphor for soul evolution. I like to think of our souls are part of a repertory theater company. We're all actors and we come together and we play roles in each other's lives. And then one night we could be doing this show where we have this relationship. And the next night we could be doing this show and be having this relationship. And we're always changing scripts and role assignments. That's what makes it interesting. We don't get locked into one show and play it out for our whole life. As an actor, you get bored. It becomes self-destructive. You start looking for problems to solve. Same thing with our life. If we're not moving from the one scene to the next scene to the next scene, our show can't evolve. Our plot line can't evolve. And so I take the work I use, the technique I worked with actors in having that conversation, and I have it with clients. What's your story? What's the script you believe you're stuck with? What's the show you're stuck in? What's the loop you're stuck in? Okay, let's play with that. Now, let's do some work. Let's do some exploring. And no one has to do anything right away or commit right away. Let's do some exploring and get creative about what can you learn from where you are now, the growth you've had from now, and take that to your next script. Take that to your next show. Take that to your next scene.
And your next role, right?
Exactly. What role do you want to play? Don't get typecast. Don't let yourself be pigeonholed into a certain type. And when we start playing with that conversation, I like to think that the ego goes on a union break. It thinks we're playing, so we can't be serious. We're just playing with the idea of rewriting our script. That's when the creativity can kick in. That's when our mind filters kind of move to the side. I call it the mind filter comb over. We identify all the mind filters we have from defining moments in our life that we look through our life. And we're not seeing our life path clearly because we have all these obstructions with our mind filters. It's like a dirty windshield wiper. So what we do is we kind of press the button with the windshield wiper fluid, wipe the screen clean. Now, where are you going? What path are you on? And it's very technical in a process, but it's very organic in that I understand each person's different. Each person's listening is different. Each person's filters are different. We all want the same things, but we all have different stories about why we can't have them. And so that's where the intuitive work that I do comes in handy, because there's basic steps you can take in the coaching process, but at some point you have to relate to the person as if they're an individual and share them with things that you wouldn't necessarily share in a big group or with another person. It's couture. I call it couture for the soul.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's unique. It's unique to the individual. And that's where, again, my theater training came in handy, because I understand the creative process from auditions to opening night. I see opening night and I could take the journey to it. I'm working with a client, I see their highest potential and I work with them to it and then hand them off to it.
Mhm.
Um,
Let's take a quick
and
break. We have just a couple minutes. So I
sure.
want to get to some of the tools
Okay.
that you use. We'll come take
Okay.
this break and we'll be right back. Such an interesting conversation, Peter, but we only have a couple minutes left. So could you give me an example of working with a client and what that looks like from the start of where they are to where you try to get them to? I know with just a couple minutes to do that.
Certainly. So, question I get a lot, what's my purpose? I want to know my purpose. And we think it's an act or a thing that we need to achieve or reach out to in order to connect with a sense of purpose. And one thing I invite clients to consider is that what if your purpose is to remember who you are as whole, complete, and divine? What if that's why you're here? What if that's the one thing that you're here to do is remember who you are as a whole, complete, and divine expression of source? And you do that, then wherever you go, you're in purpose. You bring that with you. The story you write is from that awareness. So I call it navigating our human experience from our source awareness perspective. So rather than going through the conversations of this and that and this and that and my history and what I want and who said this and who said what when I was 3 and it did this damage and all this, I say, let's talk about getting you to the punchline, which is your whole, complete, and divine. Now, what do you want to do? That right there jars people into a whole different way of thinking because we hope to someday prove ourselves worthy of being whole, complete, and divine, and we're born that way.
Yeah, born that way.
Our part is to remember our way back to that clearing. It's like
Yeah.
having an etch a sketch. It's all busy with things. You just shake it and it's clean. It's a fresh start. So that's what I do. I'm a 411 operator for people on how to etch a sketch their minds and get them back to factory reset.
And some of us don't even, some people watching don't remember 411, but I do. And
Right,
so
yes.
I think the information, the number used to call for numbers. I really appreciate your insight to all of this because I think it is about like getting back to the beginning. And I'm here, especially in a new time in my life, and I'm working really hard at making sure that I don't leave anything undone and leave anything behind. And it is such uncomfortable work. It is such uncomfortable work because I have a pretty decent life over here like this, but if I want to elevate it, then I've got to do that work in myself. So thank you for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it, and I wish you and all your clients the very best.
And if I could say, at the end of each of your days, you leave nothing behind just because you showed up. Let that be.
Good point. Thank you for that. Take care.